Hello, everybody. How's everyone doing? We are gonna, let's see. I think we're set up here. Gosh, it has been a little while. So I say, you know what? The fastest way to get anything started, let's kick it off. Let's get into it. So for today, we are going to be working on something that I've been wanting to do for quite some time. And that is around the idea of a command palette. And so don't worry, we're going to go through what that is and talk through all that. Let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Let's see. All right. Great. So first thing first, what are command palettes? Well, command palettes are, let's see. Actually, what's the easiest way to, actually VS Code. What am I thinking? VS Code is definitely the easiest thing. Let's see, all right. So I imagine y'all are familiar with VS Code, and you all have probably been using the command palette this whole time, and it's this idea of like Command P. Basically, it's a way for you to hop onto, or basically to execute commands within an application without the need to actually memorize where they are in the menu. So classic example of this basically is in the past, if you wanted to run things or do things, you always had to kind of go up here in the top, kind of memorize which folder it was under, and then if it was under a specific sub menu and whatnot. And more importantly, you had to basically learn how, like you had to memorize how the application was laid out. That is what's tricky about command, like a world without command palettes. But what's great about command palettes is that you start to get this ability to start to do things that go beyond what was originally scaffolded or designed. So another example, actually, so if we go ahead and take a look here, actually, let me go ahead and do this real quick. Okay. So here, Obsidian, which you might have seen, I have a decent amount of content around. This has one of the best examples of a command palette that I've seen. So here inside of Obsidian, right? Normally, if you're like, oh, I want to memorize how to like split a pane, you'd have to like remember that in the bottom left here, you have to go to more options, and then you have to go split plane vertically, for example, right? And there, now you split the pane. But as I think as developers, and more importantly, as we've gone through, like users are getting more used to having things be associated with keyboard shortcuts, because after all, that's your fastest method to getting things done. So here, if we just hit Command O, for example, this is your example of your, or actually not Command O, I think Command P in this case. Command palette, right, where we can do things like split horizontally. We can configure what keyboard shortcuts we're using. And also, the other thing I want to also play around with as well is aliases for commands, because sometimes what you have in one command should be called something else. And so an example of where this is done well is in the raycast here. In raycast, if you look at the preferences, you'll notice here that inside of the extensions, you have the ability to see all the different basically commands that you have available to you. But more importantly, you can add different hotkeys. You can configure the alias that you're going to refer to it as, because sometimes, let's face it, the thing that you the thing that someone might originally call it might not really work for you, or you might have a reason for calling it something else. So for that reason, I think it's important then to basically allow users to configure what makes the most sense to them. And that, I think, is the key to really starting to like going beyond standard user interface like patterns, is to allow users to really personalize things in a way that makes sense to them while still providing them the fundamental building blocks that makes the software what it is. And so anyhow, all right, so with that said, we are just going to go ahead and figure out how we can build, in an ideal world, this will become a generic kind of component that people can import into their Vue apps. And then from there, they could go ahead and customize it and do whatever they want. But also, this is just a fun way for me to do something that I've been thinking about doing for a while, and so we can build stuff with Vue. So with that said, let's kick it off, shall we? All right, first thing first, let's go ahead and create a new project. Sure, let's update. All right, projects and great repo create. We're gonna call this Vue command palette, I think. GitHub has been upgraded. Yeah, GitHub repo create. Did that not work? Okay, there you go. Create a new repository from GitHub on scratch. Great. We're going to call it Vue command palette. Don't worry about the description. This will be public. Do we want to add a git ignore? Yes. Oh, wait. I keep forgetting that the git ignore never makes sense. Like, there's like a generic one I want to use for NPM, but it always gets botched, so I have to skip it. No git ignore for now. Yes license. Let's just do the MIT license. Great. clone locally. Absolutely, clone it locally. Great. So view command palette. Awesome. All right, great. Now let's go ahead and create things. So yarn, or let's see, npm init vite. I think that should work. Yes. Perfect. Again, this is view command palette. And then we're going to use view. We're going to have TypeScript be built in. I think that's the best route. All right, now it's time to move things around, because when you scaffold a project, it is scaffolded in a new folder. So I just need to move everything down into here, and then we can pop up. All right, some generic setup has now been completed. All right, npm I, let's do it. All right, npm run dev 30. Great. All right, looks like we are set up and ready to go. The only thing though is now I just need to make sure we start off this commit history solid. So git commit, let's see, config scaffold new vite view 3 TypeScript project. Great. All right, so first thing first, let's go ahead and let's get ourselves ready for the command palette. So first thing first, what we're gonna do here is let's go ahead and we need basically a way to allow users, oh gosh, you're totally right. Some stuff is totally off screen. Oh no, hang on, transform, wait. Fit to screen. 0xnio, thank you so much for alerting me to that. I completely did not realize it. So here we go. Luckily that was just scaffold things, so not a big deal. Let me just make sure it looks good on Twitch now. Okay, there we go. Now everything's filled. So one of the biggest thing about command palettes to me is about the keyboard shortcuts. And so the question is a matter of how do we go ahead and listen to that and do things in a way that allow us to trigger things based on those keyboard shortcuts. So I think the first thing we're going to want to do is let's create a basic overlay component that should show up and toggle based on whether or not something like the right key command shows up. So again, if we were in Obsidian, for example, right here, you'll see that we're in our page, right? If this were our app and we hit Command P, there is an overlay with like a drop-down menu of the various things we can do. I think that's the simplest place for us to start. So what we're gonna do here is let's go ahead and let's create a new component. Let's call this, honestly, let's just call it the command palette. Why call it anything different? This is what's gonna be showing up. So let's go ahead and open this up a little bit. So, all right, so this will be a div with command palette as a class, and then we'll just keep it simple. We'll just say my command palette. So let's see if this works. So we'll go ahead and import command palette here, delete the comments. Great. Whoops, did not mean to split. Let's see. How do I do it? There you go. Command B, import command palette. Great. And if we drop in command palette here, that should just show up now. My command palette. Excellent. Okay. So now that we have that, the question is now if we need to be able to toggle that off and on. So for those who are familiar with Vue, I mean, the easiest thing for us to do is to start with a simple VIF, right? So let's go ahead and import ref from Vue. And then we're just going to say const display command palette. Let's be very explicit. It's a ref of, for now, let's just say false. So we'll just VIF on display command palette. So right, this is now false. So the easiest way to basically make this work now, let's go ahead and just make the Vue logo our thing, right? So if this is clicked on, we will say it is equal to the opposite of itself. And now we should be able to toggle this on and off. Okay, so that works as expected. So let's go ahead and add, the next thing we want to do though, is make sure that we have the ability to trigger this via a key command. And so the way I'm going to approach this is through the use of we're going to use the Vue use library that we talked about in a previous episode. I realized though, actually, there's some syntax highlighting. I think that's from the TS. Why is it highlighted this way? Command palette is declared, but it's never used. What's yelling at me? Doesn't matter. It's working. So click, okay, I can see things. Let's install view use on our app. Okay, getting started. So let's go ahead and install view use on our app. Bum, 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 bum. Great. Okay. So now that we have this, let's actually go ahead and just commit that real quick. View use. Great. Git commit config install view use. All right. So what we want to do is you have the ability to listen to key presses. Now we could do this a number of ways, but I think I found that with view use, at least from what I've played around with, it's pretty intuitive. So I want to play around with this first before we go ahead and add like a manual global listener for everything, because that would be a pain. All right, so core functions, browser, component, elements. Actually, let's go ahead and search it. In fact, actually, here's an example of another command palette right here, right? So this is like another way of showing that this pattern, I think, is becoming more pervasive as people start to get used to the idea of being able to navigate things, execute commands without having to move to their mouse. So inside of that, we're looking for key use magic keys. Yes, this is what I want. Oh, these are considered sensors. Interesting. So let's go ahead and show, let me go ahead and bump this over actually and bump this out a little bit. And this way we can show you exactly what's happening. So here you'll notice that inside of the demo, I can click certain buttons and it'll actually track like the fact that it's being simultaneously hit. So it's pretty cool that you can like, I mean, look at that. Oh, what a cool demo. So wait, how did that work? Yep, and then if I hit shift, it like rotates it, right? And this is listening to my modifiers, like all the key presses I'm doing, and basically saying, okay, if you have this, then run this thing. So watching space, watching effect. I mean, let's take a look at the source code for this and see how this is actually being run. So it's saying, hey, look, these are your magic keys that you're pulling out. Keys computed array from current. What is current? I want to have to learn about that. So it looks like there's basically a generic value. If it's being hit, I think it's being lit up basically. So that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and read the docs a little bit more. Actually, I'm going to bump it up a little bit because it's a little bit on the hard side to read. And I realize because it's in dark mode, it's probably even harder to read for the recording. So let's go ahead and switch that over to light mode. Okay. So okay, so you extract the keys that you want to monitor. That seems straightforward enough. And then you watch it, and if something happens, that thing happens. You can obviously use, or not obviously, you can use combinations by connecting the keys with plus or underscore. So if you just consist keys, this is the combo, this is the combo. Oh, this is very exciting. Okay, use whenever to make a key. Whenever this happened, keys dot shift space underscore space. Ooh, that is clever. I like this. So that means you don't have to create a different variable. It just automatically appends things. That's bonkers. I wonder how it does that. Okay, currently pressed keys. This is the special keyword for current press keys. This is nice. So you can basically just watch everything and the current will just know. Fascinating. Okay, that's good to know. You can alias keys so that it's a specific, let's see, shift cool, use magic keys, pre-configured alias. This one doesn't make as much sense to me. Let's take a look. Control. Oh, I see. Command, oh, interesting. Alt, option, alt. Oh, fascinating. Okay. Arrow left, arrow right. Okay, so it basically is saying that you can map specific aliases to specific keys in case you want to call it something else. That makes sense. Okay, so you might have some input elements on your app. You don't want to trigger magic keys when handling that. There's an example using use active element and to do that. So this is good because eventually we're going to need to type stuff in our command palette, meaning we're going to need to actually disable it. So we can see here that we have const active element. Okay, use active element equals use active element. Constant input computed if oh, I see. Fascinating. Okay, so what's happening here is that use active element is basically utility function that will allow us to pull the element that's being focused on. And then we're seeing here that there's a computed property to basically check, hey, is the active element like a specific type of input? Is it an input? Is it a text field? If so, then we can basically say don't trigger any of these magic key things, which honestly makes a lot of sense. So that's good to know. That basically covers, it looks like that covers almost all of our use cases, to be honest. So that is super exciting. Yeah, okay. So the first thing we're going to want to do then is let's just try this out, shall we? So let's go ahead and do the simple thing. We're going to import use magic keys from view use core. Okay. Now that we have this, although this is bothering me. Why is it graying out? Viter. Oh, I know why. I think I still have an old extension that's on. Let me just disable this. Reload required. Yes. And then, yeah. Where is? No, that's not it. Wait a second. I could have sworn I had this already installed. Because Viter is... Yeah. It's been a second. Let's see. Because now what? Are all my... Yeah, all my commands syntax. Highlighting disappeared. View 3. View VS Code. I'm having trouble finding it. Volar. Aye. Yay, Artneca. Thank you. Yep, that's what it was. Oh, there it is. Enabled. I must have been in a Vue 2 project, which is why I switched it out. Okay, much prettier. Excellent. Thank you, Ed and Artneca, for the help. Yes, I was looking for Volar. All right, great. Okay, so we have used magic keys. Now the contrast is much better. That was honestly what was bothering me. Okay, so we've seen that Command K, to be honest, is pretty popular. Also is Command P. So what if we go ahead and just try this out? So if this works the way I'm hoping it will, we could say that let's see, command, let's do P equals use magic keys. And then we'll use the watch for now. Let's just try like the simplest way. We'll watch the, let's see, space. This is only single though. I want to add it together. I see, and keys shift. Okay, actually, let's take this back. Let's go ahead and do it this way. We'll do the other one because I want to do combos of keys. I'm not looking for specific ones right now. So we're gonna watch the fact that we're gonna do, let's see, interesting, keys dot, let's see if this works. Command plus P. Oh, I don't think that works. Maybe underscore P. So command underscore P. So if command underscore P works, we will get the, I guess, the event. I wonder what V stands for. Let's log V. Let's see what happens. Okay, so we're gonna, let me close that. Let's open up DevTools. All right, we have our console. Let's bump that up a little bit so people can see. All right, so I hit Command P. Oh, snap. Hey, that hit true. Only problem though is that it triggered the print functionality. So how do we override the fact that, interesting actually. So if I'm in here, Command P, yep, that'll trigger. Okay, for now, that's fine. We're not gonna worry too much about it. We're gonna first start by utilizing Command K. That's what people are seem to be using on the web browser to, I just hit everything. Yeah, it seems like the Command K is what people are using. That's fine, K for command. And so what we'll do here then is if we get command and K, what we're gonna do is we're gonna say display command palette equals opposite, dot value equals the opposite of display command palette dot value. Great. Now we can delete that. Awesome. Oh, interesting. It's like disappearing. That's not what I want at all. Okay. Is it because it's like held down and that it's being repeated? Does that make sense? Because when you're watching it, the moment you hit it, like no matter how quick I hit it, oh. Okay, so if I'm holding it down, it's making it permanently appear. And if I let it go, technically the event's no longer happening. So then it doesn't. Oh, you know what though? Oh, wait. I think I know what's going on. I think this is why this is happening. Because you'll notice here that it's true when I let go, it's false. True, false, true, false. So basically, the reason it's toggling off is because no matter what I'm doing, it's triggering the watch, right? So I wonder what the V stands for. Is it like it just says event? Like, did the event happen? Or is it combination, like, was the combination hit? I think that's basically what it is, right? Like, if the combination was hit correctly, then great. But my only thing about that, though, is that if that's the case, what would you call V's got to mean something else. Watch V, because this is a true-false statement. So again, I'm all about calling things a little bit more semantic to their value. So let's just say, like, if the, I'll call it key combo. If key combo is true, right? Only if V is true, like is press. Yes, okay, I believe that's a nice one. Okay, is press is a nice little boolean, because that's all it is. It's a boolean that says is pressed. So we basically say is pressed, then we display, or we switch the value. Okay, that's what we got. Ah, beautiful. Okay, that's working as expected. So we have the ability now to trigger the fact that, oh, this is very cool. Okay, that's fine. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. First thing first. Okay, so now we have the ability to toggle the command palette based on a key press. And what's really nice about this, honestly, is that I didn't have to like attach a global listener and like manually figure key press. Like, this is pretty declarative. Let me start by just committing this because this works. So let's not mess things up. Let's go ahead. This is a feature, ability to toggle a simple command palette component. All right. Hey, Nunchi, how's it going? Thanks. Glad you like the new haircut. It's good to see y'all. Okay, so what do we got here? We've committed this. We're good. So now this is great. We can switch it off and on. Although I just realized it's kind of interesting. I'm holding down command right now. You can't see it. And I'm hitting K, but it's not toggling it on and off. I have to actually pick my finger off in order to re-trigger it. That's, I could call it like a slight bug that, you know what though? Hold on. I'm going to do the right thing for this. We're going to go ahead and repo. Actually, can I create a new issue from here? I think I did see. Okay, GitHub issue create. Oh, I can do this all from here. Okay, this is great. I've never done this before. Command does not fire if hold down a key after initial combo press. Body each. I'm just going to skip the body. Submit. Oh, did that work? Oh, snap. This is a game changer. I did not know this was a thing. Okay, great. Apparently you can create GitHub issues. I mean, I'm not terribly surprising. Not terribly surprised, but let's do that. Okay, I do see though here in the chat, we have Bork and Zim Gaming here with this suggestion, which actually I was thinking about doing, is let's switch this over to light mode so it's a little easier for people, is to use the whenever keyword over watch. So let's take a look at how this might refactor basically the API and how basically the usability of it. And so what we can see here is that there's a couple things going on where whenever, so the whenever keeps it shorter. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Because the whenever reduces this idea of a toggling based on the Boolean value. In other words, it assumes whenever true. So I think the trade-off here is basically if you want to actually do something specific when it's false, then perhaps the watch I think is a better option. But in our case, we really do only care when it's true. So to make it a little easier, we can say whenever, TUVW, great, right? Yes, okay, sorry, I was like, how do I do this alphabetically? Okay, so now we can switch this out to whenever the keys Command K is pressed. Oh wait, we can do lowercase. I think I like lowercase better. Command K is pressed. Then we will run this callback function. And this now will no longer need this, no longer needs this. And then we can save it. And if this works as expected, great. Everything toggles just as we want. So let's go ahead and once again, I'm all about micro commits. So This was a refactor. Use whenever API for more concise code. Great. Okay, so whenever works great. Now we have the next question of how to actually deal with entering in the commands, right? So there's a couple things kind of at play here. So the first thing first is let's enhance our command palette a little bit here into something more than just basically having H1. So the way we're going to do this real quick then is let's just automatically make sure the command palette is always shown. And let's just do a quick styling of some stuff. So we have some text that we're going to show, and then we'll have a list of commands that you theoretically can filter through. So how are we going to do this? Well, if we're going to take inspiration, let's start with Obsidian, right? Because that's something I'm super familiar with. We can basically say, let's say command list, or actually let me import ref, because it's going to be a reactive object. So let's call it command list, and the command list is going to contain a ref. It'll be an array of objects. And so the objects, the basic thing we can consider is the fact that it'll have some sort of ID. What else will it have? It'll also have like the title, right, of the actual command. Yes, I'm just going to call it title. So command title. Then what we're going to want is the ability to eventually define aliases, right? Because users will be able to define things that match the, like we can define aliases on that. We're not going to worry about a description right now. And then the only other thing though is the hotkeys. And hotkeys will also be an array because we want users to be able to define multiple ones in the event. Well, because again, we want to let people customize it as is. Most people will probably have one hotkey, but that's totally fine. So, you know what? I'm going to let the AI do the autocomplete on that, which is fine with me. So now we'll just call this command title 1, 2, 3. Okay. So now that we have this, we could then very easily define a list where we then say we can loop through. So every command in command list, where the key is going to be the command ID. And inside of here, we're going to do something. We're going to do the command.title, and we're going to do command.hotkeys. Actually, one thing at a time. Command.title. Okay, great. So we see our title, all of our titles. And then what we want to be able to do is that when we type inside of the text, it will filter that out so we can get to whatever one we're looking for. Because at some point, this command list is going to be too long to display. And so we want people to filter through as expected. So let's go ahead and do that really quick. So we'll just say const user input. Or let's say let's say command text, filter text. That's really what it is, right? You're filtering the command text. And so that can just be an empty string, which will then attach to the command filter text. Okay, and then from here now, we're gonna change it up a little bit. Rather than referring directly to the ref of command list, we're actually going to, rather than like filter, you don't wanna filter it, so you don't wanna filter your looped list within the rendering because that basically makes it render and then check for visibility every time. The more efficient way to do that is to go ahead and, it looks like it's already doing some, let's see, command list filtered. So I prefer to call it filtered command list rather than command list filtered. I see why they did it that way. Okay, I'm okay with that. So command list filtered is a computer property that will take an array, a function. It will take the filter text, which is command filter text dot value to lowercase. That's fine with me. It will take command dot list dot value filtered, go through every command, and whether the title to lowercase includes filter text. Yeah, that's pretty darn good. That's what we wanted. So command list filtered, and then now we should get, yep, this is good. And so if we get title, everything is included. Great. Let's just add, I said that we would stop doing fruit because I constantly been doing that. So I've been on a sort of Japanese food kick recently. So let's do onigiri for this one. Let's do some karaage for this one. And let's do some bento for this one. So this should be a little bit more fun now from a filtering perspective. Great. Onigiri, bento, Okay. So command filtering works. We have a list of our commands. This is great. So what we can do here is let's go ahead and change this. So we have a feature, add ability to display sample commands and filter them. Okay. So how are we doing? We're doing great on time actually. Okay. So if I can swap this in and out. This is great. So the next thing we're going to need to be able to do then is to run certain commands to change things. So for example, what are some things we might want to do? So we already have the ability to basically display or hide the command palette. And maybe there's other things we want to do, like, you know what? I know what we can do. So a simple thing we can do here is let's go to our hello world component. Okay, this is done entirely in, so I'm going to replace this. Actually, you know what? Let's just delete it. That's really the cleaner thing. So the easier thing though is let's just do let's keep it simple, right? We know that we have a counter app. Let's do that. So what if inside of our setup, we do our h2 counter. Let's do this real quick, current count. And then we have a button, right? And so this is where it's going to be interesting. Increment count. And then we'll add a plus button. And then let's go import ref from view. And then const current count equals ref 0. Const increment count equals this. Okay, great. That should work as expected. So if we come inside of here and we go ahead and let's go ahead and counter, drop counter here. There we go. All right. So the reason why I want to keep the app simple is because what we want to do now is be able to trigger the increment counter from basically the command palette. And once we can trigger it from the command palette, we can then basically try the keystroke bit. So this is where it's going to get a little interesting. So from an architectural perspective, right, we know that counter contains this, we know it has this constant called increment count. And ultimately what we want to do is to be able to call that whenever we're running a specific command. So let's start scaffolding this out as we're talking about it. Inside of command palette, theoretically, there would actually be a filter for call it increment count. That should exist. And then increment count, when we click on it, theoretically, or because again, when you're in a command palette, sometimes you click on it, sometimes you hit enter. That would allow you to then run the command in whatever context you expect it to. So the curious part now is how do we attach that event to basically do a dictionary lookup? Yes, things are crashing. Okay, so the simplest thing we can do is if we had a set of features, right? So if I create a folder for features, it's fine. I'm just gonna not think about it too much. Commands.js. Okay, so this will export a const of called command. It's fine. We'll call it because we're gonna replace our placeholder. And command list will contain a series of array of objects, but the objects need to be able to be attached to a specific function that we will call later on. So this kind of ends up in this like looking up of like we need an exhaustive list of commands that can then be called by somewhere else. So theoretically, what's the best way to do this? Okay, so you have a couple of things, right? You have this need to share functions between components, but at the same time, it's a little tricky because you need to be able to actually keep that context within it, because otherwise everything has to be saved from it, basically. So I'm actually kind of curious, can I export the const directly like this? Oh, it does not like that. If your preview cannot contain ES module exports. Yep. Okay. I guess what we could do. Okay. So here's what I'm thinking then. Is counter.js. All right. What if instead we had counter.js being exported? So we have these things. Okay, so then from here, we can export default object of current count and increment count. Okay, I think this should work because what I'm doing here ultimately is we're gonna import a counter feature from features counter, and then let me just log counter feature to see if I did this the way I think it should be. Oh, it did not like that. Oh, I'm in a component, dir. So come back. Great, there's an object here, which is great, and then it refers to current count. Great. So I'm just gonna call it counter for now. Let's call it just, oh, sorry, bumped the mic. And then counter.currentApp, counter.increment count. Okay. That's exported. Great. So that did export correctly. Let's see. Bork and Zim Gaming. Each component should just register their commands to a store of some sort. Yep. So that's exactly it. Like, the question is, how do we register those commands into a store? Is kind of the question at the moment. I guess we could create a register function that then deposits it somewhere in like a command database. Again, let's try this pattern that I'm working on right now, just because it should work at the bare minimum. Because now what we have here is we have this ability to have counter exported. So theoretically, if we look at the command palette and we take this here, right, we should be able to do something. Where am I? Here? Okay. So in addition to that, actually, we need to actually call basically the command itself that we're associating with. So for now, we can just say, can I do undefined? Yes, I'm going to do undefined. Okay, so let's do that real quick. So the command it's associated with is undefined for now. But theoretically, we could import, again, we need a way to do this programmatically, to be very clear. But for now, for the purposes of proving this would even work, increment count, you would want to be able to register it to increment count like this. Okay? So that theoretically, when we're in command palette, for the specific list, we could then say when you click on it, we could then run command. That's a little repetitive, but we're not going to worry about naming right now. So if I refresh, nothing is happening. Oh, of course not. Of course it's not happening, because I did not even import the correct thing. So if I import commands, I got it from the features commands, and then I need to switch commands to just an export default like this, default array. That should work. Save. Oh, it did not like that. Because yes. Okay, that makes sense. So this should be command list like this. Oh, everything's breaking. Cannot read filter command list dot value. Yes. Command list. Wait. Oh, I know what I did wrong. Because we need to actually then say yes. Okay. So sorry, I forgot to make sure that this is a ref from view, because theoretically this will be updated. This will be worked on. So then we can basically say const command list equals ref here. This makes sense. And then honestly, I don't even need the default object. We can just export the const directly. So then what that should allow us to do then is from the commands feature, we should be able to export the command list, which looks better now. And there we go. Now something's showing up. Does it work? Oh, snap. It works. Okay, great. This is exciting because now we have two places that we can call increment count. Now, of course, the last thing I'm going to want to figure out, though, is we need to actually make sure that we can actually assign a key, like a key command, to actually show, to actually make that work. So let's go ahead and do that last piece where, let's say the hotkey for this one, for count, is we're going to do, let's do Command Shift C, right? That shouldn't collide with anything. So if that's the case, we should be able to do Command Shift, actually, yeah, that's fine. Command Shift C. Okay. If this gets hit, then, okay, this is where it's going to get tricky, right? Because we have to loop through and run the thing, because now it's almost like when the app is mounted, it has to check. We have to loop through and check through. Okay, that makes sense. And then run that command based on the hotkeys. Okay, so let me let me try that again in layman's term. Okay, so what this means though is that if whenever we register, for now, let's just assume we're only registering hotkeys at the beginning, because later on we'll be able to theoretically register hotkeys later on that users want to customize. For now, what we're saying is when the app is loaded here, right? Remember, we're doing this whenever. What we need to also be able to do is run through all the commands and also register those things. So theoretically, I don't know if this is going to work, but we're just going to, okay, actually, one thing at a time. Commit, I always have to pull myself back. Okay, so we got it to the point where commit feature add ability to trigger count from command palette. Okay, this is great because now you can see, oh, here's my normal app, right? Bum, bum, bum. But if I want to go ahead, oh, I want to actually go ahead and, you know, increment count, then I can hit that, it'll still increment as well. So we're starting to get the essence of the command palette here. Ah, I see a question here from Cogsides. Hello, hello. What do I think about Svelt? I think it's really exciting. Svelt has done, I think, a lot to reinvigorate the community of frameworks as a whole, because I know for a long time it's basically been the big three of Vue, Angular, and React. And so it's nice to see, one, Svelte is thinking, like Rich is thinking outside the box in terms of like what might a good syntax be like if we weren't just purely limited to JavaScript. And so just like, so quickly, in case people don't know, here is Svelt. Svelte is another framework that's becoming quite popular amongst web developers. And so just to show you real quick how it looks a little bit different from, or it looks different from Vue. Let's see, Let's see, let's keep going. And then, okay, couple of things. So, So we can see actually there's actually a lot of similarities to Vue, which honestly, again, frameworks are learning from each other. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But what we'll see here, okay, here's an example. So inside of Svelte, you'll notice that you have this ability to let count equal 0, count plus equals 0, and then when you click it, it automatically increments. So this is an example of where it's starting to go outside the bounds of JavaScript, because normally that's not how a lot of the syntax doesn't exist inside of standard JavaScript. There's a lot of abstractions here and some extra compilers running that basically take it one step further from JavaScript, which is nothing wrong, because that's how you can honestly think of new features and APIs at time. But I think that's one thing I think that's important for people to recognize, is that at one point there was a lot of discussion when sort of talking about like Vue, React, and that kind of thing, Angular. And one of the things people love about React is the fact that they're like, well, it's just JavaScript, right? Like all I need to know is JavaScript. I can do anything I want. And then one of call it like the criticisms of Vue was that it was like, oh, it seems like there's black magic. It's just like, it's not just JavaScript, even though arguably it really. And so Vue 3, I think, was a push forward on extending the fact that it is just JavaScript, but then in a way that let people do things declaratively. And then with things like script setup, which I think was honestly heavily inspired by a lot of things we're seeing in Svelte, we're like, okay, so what if we give people that intermediate between like, we do let the compiler do some more things that helps people out, but still keep that like declarative JavaScript syntax, so that you're not necessarily learning things that wouldn't work in other places. Because again, everything in Vue is built upon the standard JavaScript practices. That's why when you run a const of count, for example, and you let it equal to 0, that actually will not update. So actually, I don't think this will work. But yeah, so so obviously Rich and the team have done things to try to like keep that consistent between them. So, but again, it's just one of the things where like reactivity is not built into JavaScript, so there's some abstractions handling. So basically, Cogsides, the TLDR is, I love what Svelte is doing to the community as far as having people rethink new patterns and being open to new ideas. And so, yes, much love to the Svelte community, and just excited for what everyone can do for helping us push the web forward as we build more incredible things together. So thank you for the question. Okay, so how are we doing? Well, okay, we still got some time. This is good. So, okay, so we're incrementing count. This is good. What else are common with command palettes? Well, actually, one of the things I talk about with command palettes is the fact that you should be able to what am I trying to say? You should be able to just use your keyboard to it. Right now, I'm having to actually like type it and going to the mouse to click on things. But what I want to be able to do then is that if I'm in the command palette, and let's say I'm not focused on any of these things, that I should be able to, let's say, hit the down arrow and then rotate through the list. And so how might we accomplish that? Well, in this case, we could say that if we're inside of the component, we could take the model of this whenever magic keys that we had done here and do some stuff with it basically. So inside of the command palette, let's go and just import the same things that we did earlier. And this time I wanna do whenever, we need to do a little bit of setup. Const keys equals use magic keys. So whenever keys dot down, I think that works. When it goes down, let's just log something. That's not what I wanted at all. Log down press. Okay. So if this works the way I think it will, again, I'm not in the component right now. Oh, it is seeing, the whenever is actually reading everywhere. So maybe if I start here, okay, the command is still being called. Not the worst thing at the moment. The only thing is though, we need to know whether or not it's being displayed at the moment, because I only want the down command to be called when we know that the command palette is being displayed. So the easiest thing for now for us to accomplish this is inside of app.view, we would basically pass in this is display props.display equals display command palette, and this will be a prop that we're going to show. So inside of here, what we're going to do inside of command palette is we'll const props equals define props, and we're going to have a displayed, and it'll, I messed up, type boolean default true, sure. Okay, so what this means now is we can say if props.displayed is true, then we can say that it's a down press. Otherwise, it should not happen at all. So we can see here, down press is still being, oh, wait, that makes sense. Down press is being right. If I hide it, down, doesn't show up. Okay, this is good. So now we have to do a couple of things. Now when we display, we need to actually track which item is being hovered over. So the way we can do that is, let's say hover item index, and this will be a ref of 0, because basically we're going to go ahead and hover the specific one. So the only thing though is that we need to actually then make sure that the list, if the index here is matching the hover item index, that's what we display. So hover item index can never go above the list length. So whenever we press the key down, what we're doing here is we're going to say hover item index dot value, right, is going to be equal, we're going to increment it. But not just increment it. What we want to do here is we actually want to be able to say we increment it up to the point where it's length, right? So if command list filter dot value dot length is greater than, right? If it's greater than it, then it can increment 3. No, it is length. If the value is less than this minus 1, then we increment it, else hover item index value equals 0. I think that should work. To show that this works, hover item index. There we go. So 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. Great. We got that working. Okay. So I see some questions here in the chat. So @Mafil, hello, what is the purpose of coding the command palette? Well, as far as I've seen, so as far as I'm aware, there's no popular Vue command palette library that exists right now, because ideally I'd like to see a open source component, basically a component that people can drop into their apps, so that as long as they wire, again, if we figure out a good API for how people to register their commands to the command palette, and then have users customize the hotkeys that they want, set aliases. I do think there's a standard UX pattern that could exist that could really make this a really easy experience for people, but I also know this thing is actually relatively complicated to build as well. I think React already has their own command palette. Yeah, so I think it looks like this one is fairly popular, 445 stars. So you can see here, you can search for the command, it'll hover, you can navigate over it, you can select it. But again, I think I'd like to go beyond this, because I think there is people might not be aware of it, but there is a standard UX pattern that I think would really benefit users, that once they see that and they're like, oh, I can just customize stuff, that'll be great. And so I think the more we can make that easier for people to add to their apps, the more prevalent we'd see that. So that's why we're building it. So Peter Yui, instead of using props that displayed, will on-mounted work? This is a good question. So let's actually give that a shot. So let's see, what are we gonna do? We already set up the hover index, so let's go ahead and delete that. So let me actually, you know what? Let me finish this part first of what we're doing. So when we hover over it, we're gonna wanna basically, so this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna get the index from here, and we're gonna get a class that is basically going to be, how do I wanna do this? So if the index is equal to hover in item index, then it'll be is hovered, otherwise it'll be an empty string. So to be clear, what we're just gonna do for is hovered is we'll do background color. We'll just do it a light gray, and I think that'll be good enough. Great. So 1, 2, 3. Oh, you know what? Actually, though, it's not always going to be. Oh, wait, I did not do the up command yet. I've only done the down command. Down, 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 down. And then, actually, real quick, then we could then run crops.up and have that flipped, and then this will subtract it, and then we only want to do that if until it's 0. Basically, yep, if it is greater than 0 or greater than or equal to 0, it's fine, right? Up, up. When it's 0, jump back, set the value up to hover ida command list filter dot index value length +1, right? No, -1 still. That is correct. -1, subtract it as long as it is. Once it's at 0, if it's no, once it's at 0, then you go back to that. That should do it. Okay, so then one time down, up, down, up. Okay, great. So we're toggling up and down between things. This is great. Okay, now let's try the thing that Peter is suggesting here. So here we can go ahead, add a feature, add ability to navigate selected item between with up and down arrow keys. Great. Okay, so the question here from Peter, again, is around, rather than having a prop, again, that's not necessarily the way I would probably do this. At some point, we would probably just have a store for command palette that then like shares the state between it, because I imagine other things will want to know about it. That said, what if we didn't have the props, right? Instead of having props, we could just only do it when we mount the component. So that's a fair question. So what we can do here, first, let's go ahead and delete the props use. So you can see now we can change it. So now if I hide it and I hit up, that should automatically move it up, and it did. So we know that it's being run whenever we want. But what if the question is, if we run the on-mounted, then we grab the whenever, is what I think is being asked. So what we're doing here is grabbing all this whenever, and then we mount it in. So then we can go ahead and, but we do need to import that lifecycle hook. So when the component is mounted to the page, essentially, although I do see where that could be a slight problem. But anyways, let's do this first. So if we're in here, wait a second. Did it not like it? Refresh. There you go. Okay. So here, down, 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 that works. If I hide it, down, Command K, it doesn't work. Great. Up, up, up. Great. This didn't reset. Hit down and then hit up. Oh, it didn't move. No, it did not. Down, up. I think it's resetting actually. Oh, yep. Okay, so now that becomes then you have your second problem, I think. Because this means that every time it's mounted, it's going to be reset. Oh, actually, no, that was happening anyways. That would have happened anyways. So, okay, basically, Peter, yes, your hypothesis regarding on-mounted, it certainly does the trick as far as ignoring the whenever key press is being run. So it looks like it's actually stripping it out. The only thing though is that for something like a command palette, what we probably actually want is the vshow. And the reason for this is because we expect users to probably be toggling this element as they're going through the application, especially if they're a power user, which I think a lot of times caters to the command palette. So in this case, really, I think the problem with the mounted is that the show won't ever trigger the unmounted again. So again, 1, 2, hide. Show it again, you see that it's still there. But then if I hit up, it still moves up. So I think that's where the unmounted has a limitation, but your general premise is correct. If we know that the component is going to be mounted, unmounted, then this is one way to handle the fact that whether or not it's being displayed or not. So good question on that end. What I'm going to do here is let me just change all that back. And then for now, we're just going to move it back to the vShow because this is technically more performant. Feature or refactor, use more performant toggling of visibility. Great. Okay, so this is cool. We have the ability to move between things. Now, the thing we want to do though is we're not quite done yet, is we want to say that when we hit enter on the element, we actually want to run the command. So the way we could do this, which should be fairly straightforward, is on key up, if we hit enter, we should run command.command. I think this should work. So if we go ahead here, enter, oh, refresh. Did not like that. Okay, hold on, let's make sure this works. That does work. So interesting, when you run click, it did it, but key up enter did not. Is it because I need to call it? Huh? Oh, wait. That makes sense, actually, because, oh, no, this makes total sense. Because this is not, the list element's not going to be listening for the key up. That's why. That makes total sense. Whereas clicking on it, you're focusing on it. But what we are doing, though, this is what's tricky. Okay, so basically what we're saying is whenever key, and this would have to be abstracted into this would be a lot to manage within the component itself, so we probably would have a module for this. So if props display, okay, so here's basically what's happening. We basically need to not only check if it's displayed. The next thing we want to do, I know we can write this more optimally, but we're just sort of working through this right now. If command list filter dot value, and then we're looking over the hover item index, like which item specifically is being hovered over. And once we have that value, right, the value of the specific one, and it has this thing called command, let's just log command right now. Okay, so if I hit this enter right now, oof, that's fine. Command is not defined. Why is it not defined? So command list dot value, hover item index. All right, let's just, oh, wait. Of course not. Of course it's not going to see that. We want to actually look at the, oh, that is a mouthful to read. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this and we're going to use what makes view great. And we're going to say const command, let's see, hovered command, selected command. Let's say selected command. That's basically what you're doing when you're hovered over it. Is a computed property that will go ahead and it will take the value of that, and then that should do the trick. So that should be much easier to read now. So whenever we're inside of here and then props is displayed, let's start by just logging the selected command dot value. Let's start by doing that. So if I hit enter now, or let's refresh this real quick. Enter, great. We have a proxy for increment count. The command is a function, great. So now what we can say now is we could say that we are going to run this, let's see, if selected command dot value dot command is true, log has command, just like that. So the way this should work now is if we hit enter, has command, go down. Oh wait, I mean, I think that did work, but log no command. Great, did not like that autocomplete. Okay, so then has command, no command, no command. Great. So if it has command, then we can say selected command dot value dot command, run it. Okay, fingers crossed. Yes, excelente. All right, that worked. So now we have the ability to actually see the fact that when we're actually hitting enter on the command, it's running the command on the specific command. That's saying command so many times. The function is being run correctly as we expect. we now have the ability to basically, you know, filter that out. So as we can see here, nothing's happening here. But if we do count, increment count, it updates. Yes, this is good. Fun. Okay, so feature add ability to run command with key presses only. Okay, so this is exciting because what we can do then is, you know what I want to do though? I think the input text is autofocus when it shows up. Yes, I do think we want that. So, because what I want to do theoretically is that when we hit, nope. When it's visible, we want to focus on the text element. That is actually a problem. It should immediately zero in on this. So, so this means that we're actually watching the props for displayed. If displayed is true, then autofocus this element. So the way I think we can do this is ref filter input, actually view 3 ref HTML template refs ref input key, yep, unmounted input value.focus. Okay, so this would be, okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm say element filter input, and then we can do const element filter input is a ref of null. We have that good. So then what we'll do here is we will run the watch function and we will watch props.displayed. And I think the current value is what actually is logged. So CV here. So then I just need to make sure import watched, save. So when we come through here, and then we refresh the page, I broke something. Watch, not watched, watch. Save, refresh, watch. Yeah, where did I say watched? Invalid watch can only be a getter effect function, a ref or reactive object, or an array of any of these. So you cannot watch the props? Oh, maybe it's because I'm trying to pull a specific one. All right, now the warning's gone. Okay, so there you go. Props display true, great. Okay, so we're watching the props and we're saying, hey, when the props change, let us know. So basically, if props.displayed is true, then we're gonna go ahead L value focus. Okay, that is what I want. So let's see if that works. Hide. That did not work. That did not work. L filter. Yep, on mounted if display element filter focus. If not, we make sure to return it. Watch effect after the component is mounted. We try to input in template expression, it'd be null and false render because it doesn't exist. Yes, it makes sense. Okay, so once again, if I hide it and then I redisplay it, that didn't quite work. So if props.display element of value.focus. Yep, that's what I want. So if I go inside of here, isn't there a way for me to refer to this in HTML? Oh yeah, :0. Okay, great. So .focus. That didn't work. Focus element in JavaScript. Yep, it is focus. But why did that not work? Remove .value? It's a reactive element though. Would that actually work? Oh. Did not. Yeah, so the problem is that, so hello Kino, how's it going? Yeah, the value is important because it's a reactive value that's being tracked in Vue. But as far as your question, the packages that's being displayed in VS Code, maybe it's actually just called package size. Oh, import cost, that's what it is. So that's what you're looking for in VS Code, is the import for that. Okay, so Peter here with the suggestion, need next tick. Maybe? All right, let's take a look at the API for that. Next tick. So we'll basically run that, then this. So the example they give here, wait, next tick. Okay. So you're saying like this is what you're thinking, like that. Okay, and then we can go ahead and see if that worked. So it looks like it got confused. Unexpected reserved a word await. Okay, that's fine, but then basically this means this is async. Can that work? Okay, so here, if I go ahead. Oh, hey, check it. Yep. There you go. Peter with the clutch tip here is that it looks like because we're basically running some, we need to actually make sure that the DOM element basically is available. The await next tick allows us to make sure that we automatically focus. So now it's automatically focused. We can increment count, hit enter, great, hide it, and then we're back to normal. And then here we can go ahead and, oh, excellent. Thank you, Peter, for the assist on that. That does it. So let's actually, you know, again, that's a win. So we have the ability to track and automatically focus. Feature autofocus on input when command palette is visible. Okay, great. So I think that's, yeah, I think that's most of it now. The only thing we got to do now, actually what I would like to do is sort of in the next 10 minutes, is for us to figure out, well, we want to actually display what those commands are, right? So let's update this real quick, and let's start with a simple display change, where we have the command title here, which will, let's have it be its own span. And then what we're gonna do here is we're gonna basically, yep, that's what I want. And then we're gonna have another span here with the command.hotkeys. And for now, we're just gonna do it like that. So there we go. It looks kind of ugly right now. We are gonna fix that. That's the dynamic class. The static class, we'll call it is command list item. So then there we go. We'll say command list item. And then we will display flex, no, justify content, a space between. There you go, much prettier. And then let's just do it 10 pixels. There we go, much better. Okay, so now we see that. The only thing we're gonna wanna do now is to basically make this look, it's fine. We'll do that for now. Okay, so, oh yeah, we didn't even do that part yet. Those are the hotkeys. I haven't done that part yet. So, I mean, theoretically, we can do this. This is good. Okay, that's fine. So let me just, I improved the basic look and feel. Okay, let's see. Feature, improve look and feel of command, list items, and display hotkeys. Okay, so here's the tricky part we actually need to do in the next 7 minutes. We need to actually register this command so that we can run it with what we did earlier. So what I'm thinking here is that we would import basically, how did I do this in the command palette? We did import command list from features commands. Yeah, that's what we did. Okay, that's what we're gonna do. And so once we import this command list, what we should get is the ability to log command list, which should be an array ref implementation, right? So command list dot value, and then we should see, there we go, we have the proxy of all of these things, which is great. And so we have a bunch of stuff regarding increment count, all this stuff. And so what we want to do is we want to actually loop through all of this. So, okay, so let's say command list dot value dot for each item inside of here, if item dot hotkeys dot length is greater than 0, then, oh, I made this so complicated for myself. It's fine. So then item dot hotkeys for each hotkey in here, whenever okay, this is where it's gonna be keys pass in hotkey item dot command. That was pretty good. I think my fundamentals is on that. Okay, so I don't know if this is gonna work. Hey, it worked. Obviously it's not. I chose a bad command because apparently I've learned now, trial by accident, that Command Shift C actually cues the console. So what we're gonna do real quick is we're gonna go to the commands list and let's do command. All right, I'm gonna do something really weird. Command Tab C. All right, refresh. Command Tab C. Oh no, that didn't work either. That cued other things. This is the tricky part about implementing that the command palette, honestly, is because sometimes you need to basically ignore it on it, like override the default event is basically what we need to do. So, okay, so not command tab. What can I do instead? Okay, you know what? Let's do, again, we had command shift, and then let's just do like CO. There we go. It's gonna be very, very long. Command shift CO. Once again, does not like it. Can do command shift O. Or maybe command shift O. It doesn't look like that triggers anything. Command shift O. Okay, great. So let me do that. Take this out. All right, refresh. Oh. Yes, it works. The only problem is you can't just like hold down command shift and just keep tapping O. So this is, but again, that's the same bug we discovered earlier, which is basically that what we need to do actually is more than simply register whether that a specific combo is hit once. We basically need to track whether current is equal to that. So in that regard, I think that's why the current, that's I think why like the, if I were to iterate this on a future one session, we would want to switch this to current to figure out what keys are currently being pressed and if those current keys match any of those hotkeys to run said command. But this is pretty exciting now because what this means now is that if I close this, I can run counter by just hitting my key commands and that's it. And so we certainly have some thinking to do regarding how we might want the API to happen as far as registering those things, because we would need to be able to make sure that we have like a configuration page where people can go through the various lists of commands that exist and then update them accordingly. So that's honestly, there's most likely going to be a part 2 on this. So this should be a lot of fun. But I think honestly, this is a pretty good point for us to end. And we got a lot farther than I thought because, well, I mean, you just never know with coding, right? You rather budget more time for the things you weren't sure about. And so in some ways we got basically to where we wanted to get. So user can trigger commands from a key combo. Woo, that's good. Okay, so we have the beginnings of how a command palette might be implemented using Vue. Granted, we are still figuring out some of the stuff regarding like sharing state and those sort of things. And especially if we were to turn it into like an open source component library that people need to register things to, that's a whole nother ballgame that will probably take, one, it'll take a lot of research and a whole nother session to kind of explain how that works, how we publish it, designing the API for that. But on the other hand, I think we're well on the way of designing something that people can at least use as inspiration for their own apps. So let's go and switch over to the camera, shall we, as we wrap up for the day. All right. Well, so I guess to summarize, we've built really a fundamental command palette. We haven't done a lot of the styling and stuff associated with regarding like overlays and those sort of things, but we basically have the core functionality set up. We have a couple of things to figure out as far as like how to make sure default events don't get triggered. So basically, if you're in the app and you want to override the fact that Command P is not going to trigger the print functionality, that you're going to, granted, this is like, there's always a balance of this, right? Of like overriding expected behavior from users so that if they're using the certain commands and then like, why is it not working? That you're telling them that, hey, by the way, it's because you've overridden this with this command. I think that will have to be an established UX pattern, I think, of being like, and to be honest, not an established pattern. This is why I think it's really important for users to be able to configure those things. Because in VS Code, for example, Command P is command palette for most people. But some people might really be attached to Command P for print for whatever reason. Maybe they're still printing their code out so they can annotate them by hand. And so maybe they want to switch it to Command K. And so it's this kind of thing that I kind of want to build out, just as a fun for us to see how that might happen, different approaches that we can think of. And so, yeah, with that, I think that's a wrap for today. Really appreciate you all hanging out with me today. It's been great getting to do Build with Ben again, and looking forward to doing more with everyone. So as always, if you're looking for me as far as like what to do, if you're looking for how the schedule works, not how the schedule works, if you're looking for when the next streams are going to be, you can check out this schedule at benkozen.io/schedule, and then that will have the latest and greatest. Thanks everyone for hanging out today, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.